Here he is, the man himself. This will be the introduction that will come up. Well, hello boys and girls. I thought we would make a kind of continuation video from the last one where I talked about hard music or hard heavy metal, but this time with a bit more focus on the guitar aspect now that I have guitar god David Olofsson, aka Virgin Killer, here with me. So David, he replaced me as a guitarist in the band in 2015 when I had injured my arm, and then we kept him around because after all he's pretty good to have.
Pretty good looking too.
Yep. And well, I'm a more riff focused guy, so it's good to have someone like David who can actually play solos as well. So David, do you have anything to any wise words regarding guitar playing?
Well, I've always taken the approach that you should always just like try to find yourself in your playing and sort of expose your inner attitude towards, so to speak, like you say, expose your inner attitude and put it out on the stage and just give it 100%.
And you also feel that somehow should present itself in the way that the person plays and in the technique or in the notes. And
yeah, I think I've always been very biased towards guitar players that have a very flamboyant attitude, or maybe flamboyant is the wrong word, but eccentric attitude. You have your Ritchie Blackmores, your Michael Schenkers, your Yngwie Malmsteens, whatnot, but you shouldn't try to emulate something that you see in somebody else. You should try and find that expression and present it to your audience or whoever you're playing for. I would suppose it's an audience or the listener or whatever. And that's not to say that I am particularly good at playing, but it means that I enjoy it as much as I can, and I try to be the best that I can be. I've seen many guitar players blow me away with technical skills that surpasses any form of reason, and I've always been like, oh my god, that guy is really good. But when I listen to the music they play, it doesn't really taste anything to me. It's just impressive, but it's not like like a fine meal presented, but it doesn't.
Yeah, I think that's quite a rare quality for someone to be able to express themselves so much through their guitar playing without being overly technical, and yet still make the music really good and interesting and complement the music in such a way that it doesn't become a one-man show, which perhaps is most often the problem with someone who is really, really technical.
Yeah, I think also it depends a bit of what your ambition is as well, I think. If you have the ambition to be the world's best guitar player, then you just need to sit and practice all day long, and eventually you're going to get there. But if you put the music in the focus and you feel the sort of spirit of the band that you're in, and you want to make it even better, then you should probably take a few seconds before and think about what you're doing with your time.
Yeah. Yeah, well, for me at least, the ideal, if I were to picture myself as the ultimate guitar player, then it would be to have kind of a, I don't know what they say in the technical fields, but to have as short of a route as possible from brain to fingers, so that you could kind of immediately play whatever it was that you felt. And for me, being more a riff guy, then that would be something akin to a riff, or like a power chord or a succession of power chords in such a manner. But it's really difficult, and I assume that most guitar players who look to have that immediate connection from brain to fingers are more like the guitar solo types, and of course their forum, so to speak, is a lot better for quick improvisations. So I don't really know if I even have a kind of a role model or someone in particular that I could think of who can play riffs in such a way that it immediately shows that, yeah, well, this comes straight from the heart, or that's just what he was thinking about in that moment. Or
yeah, I think it's more like when we play live shows, I never really plan the solos. There are written solos, and I don't play the solo where the solo is not supposed to be, but it's always going to be different every time we play. And I think that's important, to keep that inspiration in you in a way that you don't lock yourself into which exact notes am I to play now at this very, very moment. Because if you play one note wrong, then you're going to feel terrible over that. You're going to like, oh, fuck that note in the second bar. Then you beat yourself up. I think it's much more rewarding to just get up there and let yourself go and play how you feel. I mean, that's not to say that the riffs must be there. The song needs to still. You need to play the song, people. You cannot just go and. But you need to just listen to your heart, basically.
And then you should also have a backbone of good technical playing and know-how around the guitar, which I lack a bit, since I'm completely self-taught and I don't know like scales and stuff like that. So I have to kind of stick to what I've written, but I hope that I play what I have written earnestly enough that it shows in the playing. I remember when I was in 7th or 8th grade, and I had played guitar for a year or two, and I thought I had picked it up pretty good. I was good at playing like acoustic guitar and chords and stuff like that, but well, I had never tried solos. And then we had a music class, and we were supposed to play Killing Me Softly, and then I had learned it the day before and came up with some nice like chords and things of my own, and then in the middle of playing it, the teacher looked at me and said, "Solo, Thomas, solo!" And I tried to gesticulate that, well, I don't know how to play a solo, but he insisted, so I just started. And from that day on, I was kind of scared to even go into that field. So, well, that's not the entire reason that I didn't become a lead guitarist, but, well, I guess it contributed to a bit of respect for playing solos.
I'm actually mostly self-taught as well, but I had a guitar teacher when I went to the Swedish equivalent of high school in America, from when you're 16 to the year you turn 19. And I had this guy. He was really, really good. He was a blues player, very blues oriented, but he was very perceptive of what the kind of music that I liked. So we ended up just like jamming songs by Running Wild, like Saxon, that sort of thing. So, and he wasn't very familiar with the music, but he took an interest in learning how that music sort of worked guitar-wise, and but then in the end we just like sat and drank coffee and talked about stuff, and then I passed the class at least, so that's good. But then from there on I was on my own, and I've been ever since. But yeah.
So maybe we should do something hands-on regarding this. Do you have anything to show us?
Yes, when I watched your last video on the elements of hard and heaviness within guitar playing in heavy metal, especially heavy metal, obviously. The first song I thought about was the second song of the Silver Mountain debut EP, LP, Shaking Brains. The second song is called Aftermath, and it has an amazing opening riff that just, I think, embodies everything that's hard and heavy with heavy metal.
Yeah.
And it goes a bit like this. More or less. And either way, look it up if you haven't heard it. The whole album is amazing. Maybe one of the best guitar-oriented Swedish heavy metal albums that has ever been put to release. And there is this, it breaks down into this little, just perfect and very, very dynamic, but also very like mellow, classical stuff. I obviously know Jonas Hansson, so if you're watching this, I'm very sorry if I ruined the song for you, but something like that, and then it goes like into this keyboard solo where Jens Johansson is just blowing everything away, and it culminates in this like that's just like I don't even like, if I could write half as good guitar-oriented music as that, I would be like, I would die happy. And in the second song, 1789, he plays a very, very good solo where he incorporates a very early example of classical music being employed in heavy metal with the and then goes like, or something like that. I've always, like, when I've recorded with even with Helvetes Porto obviously and some other bands I've been in before, I always try to like think a little bit like, okay, if Jonas Hansson were here and he would play it, how would he do it? And instead of doing like overly using complicated and stale sort of tonal progressions or whatever. I would almost be like more like sort of that's just my my idea of him. He probably is not at all like that, but I choose to believe that he's that way. Yeah. And as well, if we leave the guitar hero aspect of heavy metal and become more pragmatic in terms of riffs and song structures and general attitude, I think we recorded a perfect example ourselves a few years ago when I first played live with you guys. We played a little song by this band here. The song Highway Rider.
I've actually never thought much about the guitar playing in Wolf. It's been kind of like a stalwart kind of playing, but when I think of it now, it really is quite impeccable for what they wanted to accomplish with the music, and like you almost get the feeling that there are entities rather than people playing the music, but because it's kind of ethereal in some way.
I think that also lies a bit in the production of the album itself, that the guitars are not they're not in your face the way that a lot of modern rock music is presented.
Yeah.
That you don't get like the heaviest, most like layers upon layers of guitars just like this. You have like 1 or 2 tracks, and it melts in perfectly with the overall production.
Yeah. For me, I'm having a bit of trouble deciding or figuring out what guitar sound is best for what I would like to accomplish, because when I try out different sounds, I tend to discard those with too much reverb, or maybe in a way discard the sounds that have the most atmosphere, because I'm also very adamant about every note and every intention of every stroke coming through in the sound. So for me it's kind of hard to find something where you can both have the cookie and still eat it, if that's an expression in English, because I would really like every note to be heard, everything to come forward, but still of course be as atmospheric if that is possible. But you have to make compromises quite often. Do you have any thoughts regarding that?
Yeah, I think that when I listen to contemporary music today, it's usually like, especially when it's about bands that are searching for that perfect 80s sound or whatever, it's usually like they have the equipment, they have everything, like, and they have every opportunity to make it happen. But somewhere in the studio, it always ends up way too dry in a way. You need to like find 80s music is very spacey, or like the acoustics are very important. You have the drums like that and echoes almost throughout the whole song. And if you have a very dry guitar on top of that, then it's not going to be very good. You need to like view it as that you're in a room in a way, I think. And because there are records that are produced today that sound 80s, so it's not an illusion that music today can't sound good. It obviously can, but it's something like with the trends of sound production these days that are there seems to be an ill will against making anything sound any older than 2 or maximum 3 years. And but I think we've been lucky with the people that we've worked with. At least I think we've accomplished productions that sound very authentic to the way heavy metal is supposed to sound like.
Yeah.
And that's thanks to Olof Wikstrand of Enforcer, by the way.
And some bands, if we're talking about the sphere that we in Helvetes Port kind of work in, the more obscure bands who have guitar playing that I have reacted to and felt that shit, these guys really know what they're doing, and also not in an overly technical way, as I was referring to earlier, but bands like 220 Volt, they have a really good mixture of riffing and lead guitar, which is not necessarily like wailing solos, but they always do interesting stuff on the guitars, and like twin guitar stuff, like in a both heavy and hard way. And another band that kind of does that as well is Tyrant from England. You know, the ones who did the Hold Back the Lightning single and who are still active. They also do interesting stuff on the guitars all the time, like catchy stuff, not like necessarily bursts of solo stuff that you can't replicate, but they like do the, how should you put it, the finer things of guitar playing in a very like structured manner, so to speak, and during verses and during singing. And also a band like Kim 6, I've always thought that their guitar playing is excellent. It's quite a bit held back, but you can really tell that the guitarists know what they're doing in order to make their brand of heavy metal come across as really serious and melodious.
would say that I like it when a band can incorporate the feeling of a guitar solo, or more like small melody that's solo-like or solo-ish. First that comes to mind then is the Parasite song Night Winds, that has a riff that or the intro riff is very like. Or something like that.
And of course the elephant in the room, Gotham City, the be-all end-all of guitar playing in my eyes. Their kind of mixture between the major and the minor, and the jovial and the melancholic, and the hard and the heavy, all in like one riff, often is quite unmatched in the world of heavy metal, in my opinion.
I would like to also address the other elephant in the room, which is heavy load. I think that they've also very much employed a very professional approach to guitar playing very early on. That it was a band that was not very big at the time, but they sort of still managed to sound much more professional than well, obviously than any other heavy metal band at that time. But they also sounded like they could have been Iron Maiden or whoever was really big at the time, but they did. Well, you have kids in Stockholm that just really loves to play heavy metal, and they do it very, very well and very professionally in a way.
So guys, that's it for this time. So I hope you all stay safe and that you play it hard according to what we have said.
And loud.